David Hartman, owner of Fantastic Endeavors Travel MC. Welcome to the Enjoy the Journey Luxury Travel Show. Happy Sunday afternoon. We're talking about what now for unvaccinated travel. I've been giving my audience updates throughout the last few months on unvaccinated travel, and we're overdue for one. Why? Because the big news a few weeks ago, the U.S. dropped COVID testing requirements to enter by air, and I'll go into those details. As always, like this wherever you're watching it. Share it. It really does help me out. And subscribe to my Fantastic Endeavors YouTube channel where all my shows are archived, all for the past 2 years for your viewing pleasure. So why today's topic? It's a catch-up show, long overdue to touch base with you guys and say, hey, what's going on? This testing requirement was dropped. Honestly, it really wasn't a big deal if you knew how to travel correctly. And I got a couple examples coming up. I will give a cruise travel update, and I will spend a bit of time about upcoming shows because I'm cataloging content and building some great material for you guys coming up the next few weeks. So stay tuned for that at the end today. And please leave a comment in the chat or a question about where you want to travel, and I'll answer it live on the air. And if not, I'll catch up to you on recording where all my shows go. So what's now for unvaccinated travel? It's a big topic. Not everyone's vaccinated. They want to go places. It's getting easier. For example, I'm going to Munich for Oktoberfest in September, and Munich and Germany dropped all requirements and all negative restrictions against travel. That was good news. All of our friends are vaccinated. We're okay, but no testing requirements. And there's a lot of countries you can travel unvaccinated. But just because there's not a COVID testing requirement doesn't mean you can't travel unvaccinated. Oh, no. So what does that mean? You have to know the restrictions. And there are numerous resources out there, mostly the tourism board websites and the State Department websites of each country, where you can say, hey, here's where to go. If not, direct message me in the chat or reach out to me on social media, and I'll answer the question for you. I have a resource that tells me within minutes of where I'm going, where I'm flying from, and what I go. And I still get a lot of questions from you guys, the audience, right on my channels here, and I do appreciate those questions very much. But what now? What next? I know in US, we have a whole lot of bookings and a whole lot of people coming in because that testing requirement was just an absolute pain in the ass. It just really was. I had clients that were in Alaska cruise, and I got a cruise update upcoming in the next few minutes, and they had to come back to the US, and they decided to cancel time in Vancouver because they didn't want to have the ship test them to get into Vancouver, and then to find a test on their own in Vancouver to get back in the U.S. Like, you know what? Our ship test will get us back in the U.S. Well, lo and behold, they tested positive on their last day of the cruise, had a great 2 weeks in Alaska. I always recommend a cruise tour where they did 7 days on land and then a 7-day Alaska southbound Inside Passage cruise. So they were forced to spend time in Vancouver, and it was supposed to be originally 10 days. Then they found out it's only 5 days. And then I said, hey, what's the requirement? It was to enter by air. In no way are other countries monitoring bus stops and train stations because the FAA and TSA are forcing airlines to enforce it when you board a plane. The other country and customs are doing nothing. I said, hey, find the nearest bus stop, bus to Seattle. I actually found it for them. And get on a plane in Seattle. Once you're in Seattle, it's domestic. And some of the people stayed just 1 day. Some stayed 2 days and 3 days. And they came home, travel like everyone else. No problem. So the requirement was always by air. I doubt it's going to come back, but keep in mind it does. U.S. has no authority over other countries' forms of mobile transportation like trains and ground transportation. I doubt it's coming back, but in case it does. But to clarify a past rule. But that really was a problem for cruising, and that's one reason these rules have now gone away. So it frees up how people travel. That's why everyone's excited to travel again. Other countries too. And very few countries have this testing requirement left. Speaking of cruising, let's talk about our cruising industry update. Unfortunately, the CDC is controlling cruising, and they have safe industry protocols. So testing is required to cruise. Wah, wah. But don't worry, within 72 hours, they're taking certain home tests as long as they sponsor it. I just had clients who tested positive and they didn't clear in time. One tested positive and didn't test negative before the cruise, and one tested positive the day before the cruise, and they both couldn't go. And the cruise lines are being rarely flexible, unlike the airlines. with testing positive and canceling your plans. That's just how it is. Unfortunately, the cruise lines are under a different level of scrutiny. The whole that Petri dish environment thing, which is bull. But, they also have to follow CDC requirements. As we know, they were shut down for a lot longer than any other form of transportation last year. A year ago, I was on the first cruise back in the U.S. Remember that? That was a lot of fun. Catch out that show from July 3rd last year, Celebrity Edge. Hey, I see some comments. All right, we'll get to those in a second. Thank you. Keep them coming. Cruising still requires testing, and that is strict. No way around it. And if you test positive, obviously, when you test positive, you have to test again to test negative, and then they'll retest you at the terminal. Cruise lines used to test the terminal is getting too much, so they're putting the onus on you, and they are giving various limited tests at the terminal. But just do yourself a favor and test first. Don't rely on the cruise line. Let them test you again if you test positive for some reason coming in. But don't take that too lightly. They are strict on that requirement. And they were testing you to get back in the U.S., even though it comes by air, because part of their safe industry protocols with the Center for Disease Control. That has now gone away for most cruise lines because U.S. has dropped that testing requirement by air. So in general, they're not under that onus anymore. So it looks like just one test. For Alaska, it was crazy. I had clients, they had a test to get to Alaska, which Alaska doesn't require if you fly there on your own, but the cruise line was to be in their cruise tour. Then they had a test before the ship, which the cruise line was doing if you did their tour. And then they had a test again before you got to your either U.S. or Canadian cruise port. But thankfully, when they went, they dropped the arrival testing requirement because Alaska wasn't requiring it. It was insane. It's all getting better, guys, all getting better. But if you're a cruiser, just be patient. That one will remain. And of course, what now for next unvaccinated travel? Sorry, you can't cruise. I have zero timeline on when that will change. Sorry. Why? Because again, they're under more intense scrutiny and they have certain protocols to meet with the Center for Disease Control. If you want to cruise, plan on getting vaccinated, the full regimen of shots, 1 for J&J, 2 for Pfizer, and have the appropriate boosters. I've done mine every 6 months, so I am quad vaccinated right now because I want to travel anywhere in the world freely and have that opportunity, but that's just my choice. So you have to still be test negative and be vaccinated for cruising, but man, once you're on board, it's a whole good time and no testing to get back and all good. Leslie Wiseman. Hey, Leslie, thanks for watching my impromptu show. Sorry, guys, didn't schedule today. I wanted to go live and touch base with you, and thanks for being on for a surprise feed. What about Japan? I heard Disney Tokyo is reopening to foreigners. I don't even know if it was closed to foreigners. Well, that's interesting, Leslie, because Japan was open and then had a slight closure to foreigners. They are reopened now. Poor Disney in their parks, because at one time, last April, when Disneyland reopened, that was the first time in a year their parks were reopened worldwide. But China's so conservative with COVID that they shut down Shanghai Disney again 100%. So they're having it tough with these Asia parks. But no, Tokyo Disney is back open, and it is open to foreigners. I believe you have to be vaccinated to go to the park. They're doing the vaccination pass, but I'll double check that for you. Or if you find it online while you're on the show, please let me know. But yes, that's a little tricky. But Japan does not have restrictions for travelers at this point. You can travel there freely, no testing requirements and no vaccination requirements as of a few weeks ago. But again, cases are rising, even though, hey, listen, we're no longer in a pandemic. It's pretty clear it's an endemic now. It's just certain areas are more restrictive. Now the attitude has changed about it. Now that we're having case rises, you're not going to see a lot of restrictions come back in the U.S., but other countries control their own regulations, and Asian countries are more sensitive and conservative to these, epidemics and pandemics. So they may bring back restrictions that we're not comfortable with. Just note that. But thank you. Great question. And we'll way to work in a Disney comment, Leslie. All right. So next show, I'm going to move on to the next show, is going to be a Carnival Mardi Gras cruise review. My guest can be Suzette Truesdale, who's been in the comments on many show, carried many of my show, like the Room with the Zoo show from last September, mid-September 14th. Take that out. Check that out on my YouTube channel, my Fantastic Endeavors YouTube channel. And she's awesome. She took some steady cart footage. She has a cart when she's on a ship, and she has some steady footage. Brand new ship from Carnival, a new style of ship, a type of ship. Have not been on it myself. I look forward to have a whole bunch of content to put together. Going to have Suzette on the show, either in the studio or remotely. Going to try to knock that off next weekend, July 4th weekend before the holiday on Monday. We'll knock that up probably on Saturday. I also, pardon me, Lignavate Key Botanical State Park. I visited there recently by boat, impromptu visit. Took some amazing footage. No way I can do a live feed out there. Connection wasn't good, but I have some amazing footage to bring back and show you. Matheson House is there, this coral reef house. I mean, just an amazing piece of history. These people built this house as just a caretaker quarters to have their people take care of an island, so they had someplace to visit when they're coming down from Miami. Amazing story. And it's a living museum they can visit by boat or take a tour boat out of Robbie's in Almirada, Florida. This is the Florida Keys I'm talking about, of course. Or you can even kayak out there. It's kind of a far kayak. And Indian Key is also in the same area. Indian Key on the ocean side. Lake Nevada Key Botanical State Park on the island there is on the Florida Bay side. So I'm going to do a show about that. And of course, for you Disney fans out there, like Leslie Wiseman in her comment, I have numerous resorts I visited and took footage of, including Wilderness Lodge and Copper Creek Cabins and Villas. We were just out Polynesian Suite, Coronado Springs, some excellent footage of Coronado, including an executive suite, staying there for the first time, and catching up on some other resorts we recently visited, coming here to you shortly over the next few weeks. And I can't promise live feeds like I used to. I'll be at Disney in mid-July, and I'm not going to promise anything because it's getting tougher and tougher to go live with my schedule. I'm dealing with both leisure and corporate clients when I'm on site, and some of them are sensitive about going live, but I'll do what I can coming up. But definitely I'm in the studio next week for that Carnival Mardi Gras review. Going to give you guys a great show about cruising. And as always, if you need to reach me, 305-453-9208, Dave at bucketwishtrip.com, because it's all about planning your next bucket wish trip. But thank you for joining the show today of What Now for Unvaccinated Travel. Again, clear answer is it's a lot easier to travel. A lot of countries are dropping all restrictions, but please do not assume that a country drops a testing requirement. They drop the vaccinated requirement, because for the U.S., if you're one of my foreign audience members, and I love you guys out there, you still need to be vaccinated to enter the U.S., with some exceptions, and always research those exceptions. Very important. And I know I mentioned workarounds for getting around certain places like testing requirements. There's also workarounds for vaccinated requirements. So talk to me about those. I know in Europe, you can enter one country and the others. Now Europe's pretty wide open. And you'll see, we all want foreign tourists. Europe wants foreign tourists. All these restrictions are falling by the wayside. We now know we're in a manageable era of the pandemic, finally after 2 years. And please take advantage of it. I'm more here to help as a resource, or here to help you book your next bucket list trip. You guys have a fantastic Sunday. We'll see you next week to talk about Carnival Mardi Gras, the newest cruise ship from Carnival. Have a fantastic Sunday.